like to
Yeah.
ask one question.
Yeah.
Because we all know that 2015, the Obama administration has signed the nuclear deal just to bring
Yeah.
the Iran to its zero production of uranium by 2026 or something, I can't remember. But all of a sudden, the whole
Zero production of what?
the uranium enrichment by 2020.
Yes.
Yeah. So now the thing I need to understand that if that plan is the right plan, why the situation change when the administration change in US? So their initial plan is quite different now.
Yeah. So these are the things that we cannot understand. So again, a good example for geopolitics, depending on the change of the administration, or sometimes we don't know whether the Iran has not adhered to the terms and conditions as per the agreement. So both ways it can happen. So two ways, we don't know exactly. Sometimes they might take a tiny issue and then exaggerate that, and from a molehill they might try to make a mountain and then attack the opponents, or sometimes truly they have not adhered to the terms and conditions or whatever, and then this thing. But at the same time, there are other countries in the Middle East. They also have there lots of uh, intelligence services, so they get sometimes more information or better information than the other people. So lots of hidden things or unknown things were happening, and that's why this situation is there today. But for me as a human being, it's very unpleasant because people in Iran are suffering a lot.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, again with the Sri Lankan situation, now Western world will perceive one particular regime in Sri Lanka as a friendly regime and another particular regime as an unfriendly regime. So this is how the global this thing. That's why sometime back some of the poorer states in 70s and 80s, poorer states or developing states got together and formed a summit called non-aligned movement, without getting to various camps to go in the middle path or whatever. But then practically what happens is so many rich countries or developed nations put so much of pressure for them to either get into this camp or that camp. And because they don't have much wealth and resources, then they are compelled to move away from the non-aligned movement and then get camped with either this side or that side. So lots of issues are happening in the what do you call that, in geopolitical arena. But having said that, I must tell you that there are countries very neutral, and we don't, I mean, hear anything bad or even sometimes anything good about them. Example, Brunei. Then to a certain extent, Switzerland. And then the 4 Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Finland. And to a certain extent, Belgium. So like that, there are lots of 99% neutral countries, or they don't depend on other people, somehow they manage. So there's another segment or set of countries in the world as well. So sometimes very difficult to understand these things and without much inside information, but at the same time we have to be careful, but we should evaluate the pros and cons both. That's my advice. Any questions?
Doctor,
yeah.
Doctor, can you enlighten us on the latest status of the acquisition of Trincomalee oil tanks from Indian government?
Yeah, it's like this. Now, again, geopolitics, because Sri Lanka is also nicely playing with China and India. Now, we have got so much, our second case about geopolitics is about China and Chinese debt over Sri Lanka. So now China has been given the Hambantota harbor to manage it for, up to 99 years. So then India would have felt that, okay, their presence is coming down, or their presence in Sri Lanka is coming down. So therefore, probably they must be asking for Trincomalee. But personally, as a strategist, I feel that we shouldn't have given none of these harbors. We should have managed with strategic thinking and all that. But unfortunately, it is not there with the people who run this country. Because I'll give you a very good example. When British state companies were making massive losses during James Callaghan's premiership, Labour Party, in late 70s in England, Margaret Thatcher was trying to be the Prime Minister during the elections representing the Conservative Party. And she said, when I become the British Prime Minister, I will not only introduce British standards, I will privatize all loss-making British state organizations. Actually, today, the concept of privatization in real terms was introduced by Mrs. Margaret Thatcher in 79. And she privatized British railways. I have traveled from London to Scotland, East Coast Railway. So she privatized, but she didn't give the land for that particular company. Only the carriages and the other assets were privatized, not the land, not the track. She said land is so important for this British government. So that was the concept that Thatcher had. But today, unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, when you give the land or the space or the harbor or whatever to the other company. So this is how we have to think or change our thinking when it comes to privatization or FDIs and various other things. I hope you got the example properly.
Thank you.
So I still personally feel that without giving to India this Trincomalee oil tanks, we can do it with a little bit of foreign direct investments, or better to give it to some other neutral country like Japan or whatever, which doesn't have any interest over Sri Lanka to develop and then whatever for a period of 10 years, or as a turnkey operation on BOO basis or BOT basis, build, own and operate, or build, own and transfer basis. Even Singapore is all right. Any other questions?
Good afternoon, Dr. Harish from Doha.
Yeah, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, sir. And you?
Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, we were talking about Iran and crude, and next thing that came into my mind is refinery. I believe, Sri Lanka has a limited capacity in terms of, refinery, and CPC is geared to, blending the high sulfur crude from Iran.
Yeah.
So there are various proposals have been put forward to build refineries. It will cost around 10 billion plus.
Yeah.
Has the government ever thought, there are certain refineries which can blend about 17 different types of crude, from low sulfur to high sulfur. I mean, whether it's Basra crude or, anything coming from North Seas and all that. So certain refineries have spare capacities. So government has ever thought of where they give the feedstock and take the output, and optimizing the capacities of those refineries which are currently
what you say is to have a refinery that can be accommodated 15 or 16 types of crude.
No, I'm saying, just suggesting, because something like Egypt, there are certain refineries which could blend so many crude, and they are under capacity. They are not working for the full optimum. So what government of Sri Lanka has to do is have a kind of an arrangement where you give the feedstock and you take the output, and where you pay the throughput cost. thereby
Yes.
saving about 10 billion, cost of, putting up a plant. And
Yeah.
B, because it is a win-win situation. C, we can ill afford more debt on our, Sri Lanka as a
Yeah,
country.
I mean, yeah, good point. Because as a strategist and as a normal person, I see so much of potential still in Sri Lanka to develop this country. And also at a particular forum, I suggested to convert Hambantota as an energy hub. Now Singapore is doing this, right? Tiny Singapore is doing this. Why can't we now? Singapore location compared to Sri Lankan location and Singapore location, Sri Lanka has a better advantage. And also we have the Mattala airport close by. So you can cover every ship that is passing Hambantota, and probably at least 30, 40, 50% of planes that are passing through Katunayaka, especially for refueling. Because when it comes to Colombo Port is very active only for transshipment of containers. But that is, the profit is very minimal. But if you can convert Hambantota into an energy hub and also for transshipment, we can make so much of profits. And also, as you correctly said, yes, going with, but the initial cost is, I think, around $2 billion or so. But government has been looking for a foreign direct investor to do this, but there were lots of proposals, but they didn't take it up. I don't know why. But yes, there are so many opportunities for this.
Even besides building the infrastructure in our country, we can piggyback on those refineries overseas which have spare capacities. Now, for example, Egypt.
Excess capacity.
Yeah, under capacities, because the utilization levels are low because of the reduction of global market space.
True.
And I believe it was some proposal was sent to CPC long time back, but I'm not too sure whether the officials understood the concept. Because all you need to do is a feedstock. Now, for example, some refineries in Egypt, they can blend more than 17 types of crude. Now, Sri Lanka can only blend high sulfur crude from Iran.
Yes, that's right.
So all you do is give them schools feedstock and you get the output. Normally, the conversion ratios are anything above 85 to 90%. So thereby, you don't have to spend $2 billion in putting up a refinery in our country.
Yeah, then we can transport and do the storage here in Hambantota.
A lot of things, but without any capex.
Yeah, true. Yes, lots of options. I mean, not only that, now we can forget about those things. We can export salt. Now up to February or so, no, up to April also, we were importing salt. And when you export salt, right, you can even export magnesium as a byproduct, right? So lots of, I'll give you another very good example. Now we have ilmenite in Pulmudey. So we were just trying to sell that stock to one of the multinationals about 4 years back, 3 years back, if I remember right. Fortunately, LOLC, now if you sell raw ilmenite, a kilo would be about $2. Fortunately, LOLC went beyond their core competencies and got that deal, and now they add value to ilmenite and sell at $27 from each kilo of ilmenite, giving so much of foreign exchange to Sri Lanka. So similarly, another multinational came and offered $3 per kilo when LOLC initially said $2 per kilo, because they knew very well they can earn $24 more from each kilo through value addition. Fortunately, it was given to LOLC. So like that, even we have this Eppavela phosphate reserve. That's another one. So lots of opportunities are there for foreign, to earn foreign exchange and increase exports and various other things. But I don't know what's happening or can't even imagine. And people are now, it's becoming not bothered in Sri Lanka. And but still I see lots of opportunities, so much of potential in this country. Any other questions? Okay.
Doctor,
Yeah, tell me.
yeah, I think this is kind of an awkward question, but I would like to ask this one just to clarify myself this concern. See,
Yeah.
now we talk about geopolitical impact on our countries and economies. Now, these are the famous level scenarios we discussed, but I'm wondering sometimes there can be some issues that, you know, when the leadership built up in our countries, like developing or less developed countries, there can be some developed countries or the well-established countries, they have their own agenda in the world economy or in the future of the world economy. So they may have some impact, not directly in terms of putting some sanctions or something, but, you know, indirectly threatening the leaders of the emerging economies and all these things. So do you think that such things can happen in the world?
Yes, 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 because now most of the developed nations want to dominate trade in the world. That's why when some countries get a huge harvest, they don't even give at least 1% of that for starving people in Africa. They just go and dump the excess harvest in the sea because they want to maintain that equilibrium in the world market. And another good example is that now, as an example, right, I'm just taking a hypothetical scenario. Now we import so much of wheat from America and convert them into flour to produce bread, buns, and so on. Suppose if we embark on a project to grow wheat and maize in Sri Lanka and to convert that into flour, importation of flour from America would be curtailed. So then their system is such that most probably the American ambassador in Sri Lanka will send a message, some kind of a WikiLeaks to America saying Sri Lanka is doing that. We are losing $1 billion as exports, try to do something. And then we don't know anything. And ministers are clueless, and probably so many people are clueless. I had no iota of knowledge about the world affairs, globalization, protectionism, and so on. And suddenly, one of the top guys, prime minister or president or even a minister, would get an invitation from the White House. I'm just taking a hypothetical scenario, right? And then he would be given a red carpet welcome, and Rupawahini, ITN, all this will show them as, okay, America is now supporting and blah, blah, blah. And then while discussing, they will say suddenly, okay, due to the relationship with Sri Lanka, America has decided to give so much of wheat at 50% discount for the next 6 months. So what we will do is we will abandon that project what we launched to grow wheat and maize because we are getting wheat for 6 months, 50% discount. So this is how they tackle the situation, sometimes even you're, under your feet. And if you are a smart leader, if I was the president, I will get that and add some value, keep another margin of 30% and re-export that and get some foreign exchange. And I will continue with my wheat and maize project to convert them to flour in time to come. So this is how you have to think. Now, this Croatian president, that lady, I can't remember her name, she's doing a good Croatia. So you have to now see the way Angela Merkel is running Germany with a PhD in chemistry, right? And 4th time she was elected as the president, chancellor of Germany. So you have to have that thinking and, Singapore also was under severe pressure when Lee Kuan Yew was making changes. And I have the video clip how he challenged the American journalist. He said point blank, having lived only 6 months in Singapore, and I have won 12 continuous elections, and with 27 years of experience in politics, I know better politics in Singapore than you. So you have to have the mettle and the thinking and everything. Like, then when they get to know that they are, kissing the wrong hand, they will just, move away. And then by that time, that regime has changed in that particular country as well. And probably you can develop another relationship with the new regime. So there are things like that. Is that clear? Did you get the point?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, right. The second case, Chinese influence on Sri Lanka. Silk Road. Now they came up with various aspects, Silk Road and all this, right? Also called Silk Route, ancient trade route linking China with the West that carried goods and ideas between two great civilizations. Now, you know, if you take history, right, the Nile civilization in Egypt, then Mesopotamian civilization in Iraq, then Mohenjo-daro and Harappa civilization in Pakistan, India, then the Yangtze-Kiang and Huanghe civilization in China. So China has been there for over 6,000 years, and they only started, or they only discovered the printing system, then also the, what do you call that, the gunpowder and various things. So they had that civilization and the desire and the passion to do certain things for the first time in the world. Now that's being resurrected. Announced in 2013 by President Xi Jinping, a brand new double trade corridor is set to reopen channels between China and its neighbors in the West. Most notably, Central Asia, the Middle East, and the Europe. Now, China is nicely using their population for their distinctive competencies or to gain distinctive competencies. Sri Lanka as a nation, we have many competitive advantages and distinctive competencies. Are we using such advantages for our benefit? That's the question. According to the Belt and Road Action Plan released in 2015, now this was a meticulously planned global strategy, not only for trade, but to become a superpower and also to sometimes maybe even to eliminate or destroy some of the other superpowers. That's why other superpowers are also now equally in tough terms, imposing import duty for their exports, nicely surrounding China through Myanmar and South Korea and Taiwan and even India to a great extent. So lots of things are happening under the carpet, with the goal of improving trade relationships in the region, primarily through infrastructure and investments. So this is, I mean, this picture shows about the Silk Road and the land route. The black shows from Xi'an to Central Asia to Moscow to Rotterdam in Austria, and then going up to Venice, Italy, and the blue routes, right? 21st century maritime Silk Road. You can see how Sri Lanka is connected through Hambantota, and then the world, Nairobi, Kenya, and all that. So it's a massive plan for trade, and some rail lines are there, land lines are there, sea routes or maritime routes are there, and it basically encapsulates the whole thing or the entire world except for America and few other countries. So the question, does China genuinely need to improve trade? But I personally, what do you think? Does China really need to improve trade through this Silk Road and land route and all this, or do they have some kind of a hidden agenda? What do you think, my dear friends?
I think China is into the business of getting world power, not by gun, but by investment and building up the economies in other countries.
Yeah, true. But at the same time, they are, for the last 5 years, they have been modernizing their army, navy, air force, spending so much of money. Now they say that they have submarines and various other things. So other side is also secretly working. Only thing is when When America does something, it appears in Yahoo the following day. But when China is doing that, nothing we get to know.
No, actually, see, that may have negative repercussions, but because the China is always be careful to take the actions which has bad impact on their economies. Now, for example, when they go and invest in Africa, they have taken the right decision at the right time, whereas India has taken the decision, but India has not aggressively worked on it, and America has taken the decision very late. Even though American has one African president, still they have not taken the decision the right time. So the same way, I think that China is trying to get the upper hand, connecting the nearly 2/3 of the world as a superpower to build the right what you call the power equilibrium in the world.
Yes. And yes, you're correct. And do you know that China, just like the way they have helped Sri Lanka, they have helped 64 other countries in the world?
Yes.
Right.
And
Any other views?
Even I think in 2001, they come up with this BRICS, but to certain extent, they could not achieve the main objectives of the BRICS. And I think now BRICS is like kind of paralyzed.
Yes. But, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
So I think they are trying to catch the same agenda by devising certain things like Belt Road and investment and all these things.
True.
That's my understanding.
Very good, excellent. Any other views?
Well, I think it's a positive thing that the Asian superpower is finally coming into creation, Doctor, because America and the West, because the Western superpowers have been bullying developing nations, in my opinion. So I think it's there's some positivity, some optimism with Asia rising to its intended levels, and China is leading the way with it.
Right. Okay. So that means what you say is that because the West was harassing the Asian countries, China is supporting the Asian countries.
Well, they have their agendas as well, but at least I think Asia is making a comeback in this situation. And the COVID situation also showed that the Western powers are not as powerful as they appear to be, with the complete mismanagement of the COVID situation as well, and Asia overcoming it.
Yes, good point. Yes, good point. Any other views?
Yeah, in the contrary to what he has just said, if you look at the history, the world powers before China has helped other nations to build up their economies vastly. But whereas they have not had that much of a diabolic agenda towards those nations, they have helped them. Of course, they have to protect their interests, so they have to put certain conditions and criteria when it comes to development, and of course, it should benefit them as well. But what I am thinking is China, China is strictly following the footsteps of their diabolic agenda, and they are not really into develop the nation, but to acquire the properties to their own advantage. Because there are so many examples, as you said. If you take Zambia for an example, and Madagascar for an example, and now Sri Lanka, so many countries there. It's like a plague. Whenever they go and touch, it becomes a property of China automatically.
Yeah, okay. Any other views? You're quite right, yes. Any other views? Ladies? Okay, so we will see. Good, excellent. So this is about China. From 2004 to 2017, China provided $15 billion in loans to Sri Lanka. $15 billion. China holds an estimated of about 9 to 15% of Sri Lanka's external debt. As per my knowledge, it's about something like 15.7% at the moment, almost 16%. Hambantota deep sea port over which a partially state-owned company of China now holds a 99-year lease. Basically, Hambantota port is managed by a Chinese state-owned company. The lease was secured in 2018 as a part of a US dollar 584 million debt for equity swap after Sri Lanka defaulted on a Chinese loan secured to build 1.2 billion facility, sparking criticism that Sri Lanka was a victim of Beijing's reputed debt trap. They're nice, and also these are high interest loans. They knew even at the time of granting that Sri Lanka will find it difficult to pay. It's like as a banker, you give a high interest loan. It's like getting a loan from a finance company at 27%, 30%, while knowing very well that the borrower cannot repay or will find it difficult to repay. Hambantota is vital for their belt and Silk Road. So they had this plan even in 2013. But at the same time, they supported Sri Lanka when Sri Lanka was in trouble at the UNHRC. So they nicely used the opportunities and so on. Now read this one. Exim Bank of China funded the construction of Hambantota port, and the project certainly was not an economically sensible decision as per diplomat.com, not me. I have put, because of the sensitive issues or whatever the areas, I have put the source as well as a professional. Right, economically sensible decision at the time given the fiscal constraints of the Sri Lankan economy. There were serious concerns about the necessity of constructing an additional international port in Sri Lanka, particularly one financed through borrowing at commercial rates, not at project rates. Whether such a port would be able to generate enough revenue to break even. Sure enough, Hambantota port was not making enough revenue to repay China when loan repayments came due. However, the real reason Sri Lanka moved to lease the port to China goes well beyond the difficulties of paying off the loan installments on debt obtained to construct the port. The Hambantota handover indicates a far bigger economic crisis underway in Sri Lanka. Now see this one. Although Hambantota port was leased to state-owned Chinese company, the loans obtained to construct Hambantota port were not written off. And the government is still committed to loan repayments as per the original agreements. That means nothing was written off, and also we were compelled to give the port as well for their management. The money obtained through leasing Hambantota port was used to strengthen Sri Lanka's dollar reserves. That's why last week I told you this was pumped in, this money was pumped in to maintain the dollar. We should have allowed the dollar to fluctuate and use that money for some other productive purpose, or at least to repay that loan. Particularly in light of the huge external debt servicing due to the maturity of international sovereign bonds in early 2019. That's why I said that the budget, when it comes to the revenue of Sri Lanka, right, 41% or so we pay only on interest payments. Huge debt. That's why now 83% debt, right? And when you take the budget deficit and all that, right, hope you can remember the 4 areas, and 40% on interest, high rates. So in addition, the tussle between China and India for Sri Lanka also coming up. Now when India is accusing China or China is accusing India, Sri Lanka is getting sandwiched without knowing whether to praise or criticize or whatever. We just maintain silence. So you can see the map. Yeah, tell me.
Doctor, the other day I read an article, they say in the year 2020, the Sri Lankan budget deficit will increase by 32%, which was 1.01 trillion rupees. And this year it will increase to 1.4 trillion rupees. Is that true? Because the article is quoting the finance ministry.
Wait, this 1.4 trillion of what, rupees or dollars?
Rupees.
So in dollar terms, how much? Just divided by 180?
Yeah, let me just do that. Divided by 100. Like 7.7 billion, is it? Like something like that. My mathematics is good.
It's about, I don't know, because our GDP is around 90 billion. So 83% debt. So that means roughly about 90 billion into 83% is 75 billion we have debt. Yeah, roughly about 75 billion debt. So this ministry article says what? Our GDP will go up to about 1.4 trillion.
1.4 trillion, yes. Almost 32% increase compared to 2019.
No, can't be. With this COVID and all, I don't think that it's a realistic figure. Because when you do the budget, you have to follow SMART concept, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So 32% is impossible. Probably it might come down by about 20%, I personally feel. But we have to read this article between lines. But I'll give you a small advice as MBAs. Way back in 320 BC, Aristotle said, now that is 2333 years back, if you want to be a leader, you have to have logos, ethos, and pathos. Logos means logical, ethos means ethical, and pathos means people friendly. So I would like to see this statement. While appreciating your contribution, I would like to see this statement under present scenario, probably after the elections, and see how it stands with the new parliament. I personally feel the way things are happening, and almost the economy was dormant for about 3 months in Sri Lanka. 32% is little too much. But if it is, say, okay, 5%, 6%, we can believe. So think about on those terms, but 1.1 trillion to 1.4 trillion, I don't know. Anyway, we will wait and see.
Okay, thank you.
Any other views? Because now for the last 3 months, no revenue at inner revenue, except for paying tax and little bit of VAT. No income tax and no other this thing. Then we have curtailed importation of 2,400 odd products. So no import duty for those products. And they are the ones the government earns so much, luxury items, especially vehicles and home appliances and, you know, luxury items. And they were not there, I think, since 15th of March. So with all these, I don't think it's, but anyway, we will see. And also, no budget was presented and parliament was not there. So we'll have to see. But only positive fact is we were getting little bit of foreign aid from the European Union and WHO and from China. So they were the positives. So we will see. Because no one knows, as per my knowledge, even I don't know. I'm also clueless about what's happening and how they are managing or whatever. So, any other views? Okay. Case number 3 about India. India cannot match China in terms of economic clout, but geographically is a big advantage for India. Therefore, India's neighbors have to take that into consideration. Now, you can see the size of India and Chinese border. In this border only, just about Nepal, in this border only, so much of tension now at the moment. But at the same time, India has so many borders with Pakistan, China, Nepal, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and so on, and Sri Lanka to a certain extent. So they have to focus on so many borders, just like Germany having 8 borders. But India is huge, 1.2 billion population, but China is also with 1.4 billion population. And we have a military agreement with India, or Sri Lanka has, right? India has the military agreement with Sri Lanka. And diplomatic relations. I personally feel that we have to have a better rapport with India being our next door neighbor. And also we have so much of impact on Sri Lanka from the Indian economy and so on. And we had this Tamil terrorism issue with India. And India is also surrounded by Pakistan, another nuclear powered country with nuclear weapons, China, again, nuclear weapons, and India, so a little bit of tension. And we signed it, we had the first trade agreement signed during Chandrika's time, and up to now, Sri Lanka has not gained so much, but India has gained a lot. And India has been pushing Sri Lanka to sign ETCA, right, economic trade, cooperation, whatever, I can't remember exactly what ETCA stands for. So, but they have been pushing, but Sri Lanka, now for your information, National Chamber of Commerce in 2016 and sought my expertise or expert advice about international trade and to give my honest, impartial opinion about ETCA. So I went through the document, 64-page document, and I gave my honest opinion as a professional. And basically I said not to sign. I justified every point I made and also the advantages that India possesses. But India has been pushing, and if we sign this, basically most of the Indians can visit Sri Lanka without visa. You can imagine the situation. But at the same time, having said that, there are certain industries like IT and all, Sri Lankan companies will benefit a lot. But there are pros and cons, but India has put certain restrictions for our tea exports as well as the apparel. For your information, now India has put a clause saying that we can export only 8 million units of apparel to India under ETCA. So generally by 10th of February, 8 million is over. So we have so much of basically another 11 months to export, but we can't because we have exceeded the quota given by India. So if it is free trade, it has to be on equal level of playing field, then only we can really compete. Just imagine if we get the Indian market to supply garments and tea, but they have put restrictions to protect their local industries. So these are some of the concerns. Then concern about the Chinese influence in Sri Lanka. That's why when China is, China wants to start a container, this thing in the port, India wants to have the other jetty to construct their container yard. When China wants to get Hambantota, India wants to get Trincomalee. So both are competing to have Sri Lanka as well. Any other questions? Or would you like to voice your opinion or clarify something? Hello.
So this must be a silly question, but why, this all these things, the geopolitics and all those things are happening. But from Sri Lankan side, the whatever the politician do, but those things are assessed by the economics. So such things why we do that, the that Hambantota harbor and all those things, why we have given to the China and all those.
I didn't get your question. What is that?
Because these assessment done by economists, right? So why we such
No,
things?
I don't think. I don't think. I don't think. I don't think. Now, with my little knowledge, I can just quote one example for a particular massive global marketing activity. They never invited sim people or slim people. Right? This is for a major global marketing aspect. And it was decided by few people in the ministry and so on. So you can't exactly say that professionals are involved, because always, as per my knowledge, there are certain issues between two P's, politicians and professionals. And professional now, for your information, if you are a professional, right, you should never get into this side or that side. Whatever the mugger or that and that. Now I was invited by both Vietmaga as well as the other side, but I never went for either this or that. I never participated because I'm a professional. I want to be impartial. I want to maintain my integrity. If they say something, I'll do that as a professional and voice my opinion straight away, and then I will this thing. So that should be the way. But most of these now I'll tell you a very good example. Now we have signed a trade agreement with, I think, Singapore. Now, one thing, when you sign a trade agreement, there should be an impact assessment. It's a must. But this was not done in Sri Lanka. Not done in Sri Lanka. So how can you say that economies are involved or whatever? So you have to know, right? Another example is, now I know as a professional, I have conducted so many brainstorming sessions for my consultancy for companies when designing strategic plans and all. Sometimes I tell the company, for this brainstorming session, not only the senior management, I want few people from the middle management, and also I want at least 2 union guys, and also at least 2 people who have left the company for me to get the real picture. Some companies hesitate, but some companies accommodate. If they accommodate, I get a very good view about the positives, negatives, criticism, why have they done it, everything. Then I can come up with a comprehensive plan. I have done it. So that's the way that we should argue, discuss everything, and then come up with a good plan. This is what exactly happening in Singapore, Germany, and top countries, Japan. So that's the mechanism that we have to adopt. Is that clear? Did you get the point?
Yes, I got the point.
Okay.
But the thing is, why that politicians are not encouraging those things? Because this end of the day, this country is going, down, and so
exactly. That
so
is
that's
the question.
What I want to highlight. That's the point.
Yes. So if you read my article, I have clearly said, from the time we got our independence, right? Please read my article, Mother Lanka on Saline. How many of you have read it?
I read it.
Yeah, so please read it. I have clearly said we didn't have leaders in this country since our independence. At least they lacked one noble trait. Some were very logical, but they didn't have the, pathos or ethos. At least they were missing one noble trait. That's why, so we can't call them leaders. Whatever they have done, they have either done for their personal benefit or by accident or whatever. we didn't have leaders and we don't have leaders up to now, compared to Lee Kuan Yew or Nelson Mandela or all this. Any other questions?
So,
Or any other? Yeah.
right. When you take, geopolitics, now we all talked about how we could, geopolitics scenarios, taking countries into context. What if we take, a country like India and its effect on the central government by the state governments? Can that be also classified as geopolitics or cannot be?
What is that? If you take India,
as a country, and their governing units within the country, like the central government and the state government, the pressure which is coming to the central government by the state governments, can it be classified in a geopolitical context?
That is not geopolitical, yes, to a certain extent, but also the political pressure within the country. Now, as an example, if the Indian government is a coalition government with so many parties, and if they have to depend on, as an example, right, if they have to depend on one particular political party to maintain majority in Lok Sabha, sometimes they'll have to do what that political party says or whatever that state minister says to retain in power and to remain in power. So then that might create some issues in Sri Lanka as well. Did you get the point? But if the government now, Narendra Modi's government has a clear majority in Lok Sabha, right? He had a landslide victory beating Rahul Gandhi in the last elections and previous elections. So because of that, now Narendra Modi doesn't have to depend on whatever the other states to make decisions. That's why the atmosphere and the relationship between Sri Lanka and India has been very good. So what you say is correct. Yes, sometimes because of the state pressure on the central government might create some internal as well as external political issues. Internal political issues might create some external diplomatic issues as well.
Yeah, same thing can be. I think it's a contributing factor when it comes to some years ago when India voted against Sri Lanka. I think basically because of the pressure which came from Tamil Nadu and the other supporting states.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Professor, are you open to discuss about the exam on the 31st? Do you have any advice for us?
Yes, I was about to start it. Shall I let you know? Shall I give you?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Now your paper has 6 questions. To answer 5. Right? There's a choice, and this is a take-home exam paper subject to Turnitin. And these are the probable areas. And I hope you can remember Professor Fonseca covered the first 3 ones. And probably you might get something on costing and input output, also on elasticity and so on. Then you might get something we discussed about the central bank and the objectives of central bank. And so on. Then today we discussed about geopolitics. So it's another probable area, but you have to think and write, right? Because it's a take-home exam, you have 24 hours. So you can refer to whatever the document, but make sure your similarity index does not go beyond 40. Then also on the very first day, we discussed about the market structures. Perfect competition, monopolistic competition, oligopoly competition, and monopoly competition. definitely there will be a question from one of those structures. And also the most important thing is application of knowledge to the given scenario. Then we discuss, I taught you about as the CEO or as the CFO, when you are producing mass scale, how economies of scale would help you to reduce cost, to reduce the unit cost, and so on. And also we discussed about the budget deficit, how central bank policies or the way you bridge the budget deficit create an impact over the economy, and so on. So these are the probable areas. Also, just a piece of advice, if you feel that you can add some graphs or provide at least one table per question, whatever, depending on the scenario, depending on the question, definitely you would get at least 1 or 2 additional marks.
Excuse me, Doctor.
And yeah, tell me.
I have one question on the similarity when it comes to the assignment we are writing now.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to give some examples and some comparison which include the names of the countries in the world. So
yeah.
So we will get some sort of bad impact on our similarities because of the...
No, I will explain. Generally, overseas now, best thing is you have to convert the meaning of that whatever you're writing into your own language and write and put the citation. Right? Because 90% of the students get less than 40%. So convert that into your own language and say Pereira 2018, whatever, if you are doing the assignment. But for the exam, we don't want citations. But convert that into your own language and write it. That's why I always tell my students to write myself in 3 different ways. Then you learn the art of converting into your own language. Keep a thesaurus with you to get the synonyms. Then most of the foreign universities go only up to 20% for similarity, but we are going up to 30%. And if it is 31 to 35%, we deduct only 5% penalty. That means if it is 20% mark allocation, just 1 mark. And if it is from 36 to 40%, we just deduct 10%, which is only 2 marks. If so, we are basically going up to 40%. That means we allow you to copy and paste up to 40%. And then if it exceeds 40% only, we give a flat rate of 20%. So convert into your own language. And then so whatever the country names and all that will come within that 40%. I can assure you that. Also, having said that, we are very flexible. If it is a technical question subject like law to a certain extent, or statistics or finance to a certain extent, right? When you answer certain things or certain sums, right? Now, as an example, when you say current asset ratio, like obviously you have to write that. You can't convert that into your own language. So for technical questions, we have a flexibility limit, which I don't want to tell you, but we will decide that and apply that, right? Giving little bit of more room beyond 40%, but we are very flexible. But for other subjects, managing organizations, economics, HR, OB, operations management, international business, all other subjects, non-technical subjects, maximum 40%. because I can show you all these things, the way students have copied and pasted. It appears in your assignment, in our website. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yes, it's clear.
One more question on the same.
Yeah, you can ask me any question. I'll help you. Don't worry.
Yeah. Because now, let's say if you want to copy a graph from an international magazine or internet or somewhere, definitely the source and everything. Is it okay to just capture it as a image and then stick it to the assignment as it is with the same color and all? Because sometimes we're going to make the same.
It's like this. It's like this. If now the similarity means the web, right? Turnitin will check from various sources that has been uploaded to the World Wide Web and see whether you have copied and pasted this. So if you are taking a table or a graph, yes, you can do it. And wherever you can now, right, I'll give you some tricks of the trade. Turnitin checks up to 4 words. So if you can just change at least 1 word within 4 words, then you don't get caught for Turnitin. Is that clear? Did you get the point?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So that is one thing. And then if that particular graph or table that you are taking from some other source, if we are only taking you as an individual and including that, there's no probability of getting plagiarized for you. But if it is a common graph where all 30 students have to include in the questionnaire or the assignment, then there's a strong possibility of getting that plagiarized for every student. Then in that case, you have to decide whether to slightly change the wordings or whatever for that particular graph or table or whatever. Right? So this is how you have to decide. So you have to pay a little bit of attention for this, because now these things are coming under Intellectual Property Act. And then next term, you do this with Dr. Cabral and he will explain. Now it's like this now. Can you just copy another music album done by somebody and then can you just sell it? No, you would be liable for patents or whatever, right? Copyright or whatever. Then the same theory applies when another scholar had done so much of research and done. And if you are just producing it as if your piece of work, you're liable for plagiarism. That's the concept behind this Turnitin.
Yes, it's clear. But my question, the one part I asked that when we take that particular graph, is it okay to copy as JPEG and stick to the assignment, or you?
Yes. No problem. No problem.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
No problem.
So, excuse me, sir. Once the JPEG is pasted,
I can't hear you.
Once a JPEG photo is pasted, so does it go under this web plagiarism? Like, does it have any impact?
That varies. I can't exactly tell you now, because if it has been copied by so many students, it would appear. But also there's another chance now. When the deadline is at 12 midnight, always the first 10 students who upload much prior to 12 midnight, there's a possibility of getting a lower similarity index. Those who upload around 11:50, 11:55, because their assignments would be cross-checked with the already uploaded other assignments as well. Did you get the point?
Yes, sir, yes.
So try to upload it as early as possible, at least during the day. I know you all are working so much of work and all that, but at least during the day, say around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, if you can do that, you stand a better chance of getting 7%, 8% or 4%.
Doctor, during the exam, like, in the very first module that we have taken, we had a word count limitation for each question. I hope we don't have that in this exam, or
No, roughly restrict your answers, all 5 questions, to about 3,000 or 3,500. Total into 3,000, 3,500.
Okay, doctor.
Okay. When is your exam? 31st?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know my mobile number?
No, sir.
Not 773.
77.
Right. For all of you, right? Qatar and Bahrain. Not 773-148-313. If you have any clarification, not the questions, right? If you have any clarification, just send me a WhatsApp. I'll try to answer on the same day or at least the following day.
Thank you.
Or you can drop a small email. Generally, my students don't fail unless you are really bad or if you don't submit your assignment or something like that. But at the same, I'm very flexible, but at the same time, as the head of academic affairs, I have to maintain certain standards.
Excuse me, sir. I have one more question regarding the assignment.
Yeah.
Now I have certain graphs and sometimes some figures which I make as a small presentation.
Yeah.
I know that there is a strict control on the formatting side. So is it okay to have colors? Because when it comes to economic, I believe it's a live subject. We need to have some sort of colors to show the different things. Is it okay to use different colors in the graphs and the
yeah,
figure?
but it has to be, I mean, gentle or say light colors, because this is a professional master's assignment. So my advice is, yes, don't make it a diary or whatever, but you can add any amount of this thing to rationalize your arguments, add value and all that. But if you have so many graphs or whatever, you can put the main one in the body of the assignment and put the balance in attachments, because I check them as well. And I give a feedback for every student for your assignments. Whether your introduction is good, or arguments are not there, or theoretical underpinning is not there, I give a feedback. You can, in the portal, you can check the feedback. You know, there are few tiny boxes. When you click on that comments box, right, above the plagiarism, Turnitin percentage, you can see my comments.
Okay, thank you.
Any
Doctor,
other?
one more question.
Yes.
Regarding these graphs and tables.
Yeah.
Do we have to put the source? Once you put the source, we get caught to the similarity, right?
It's like this. If it is a table or a graph, yes, underneath you have to put the source, and the same thing should appear under references. Yes, you have to put the source, but that's why we have up to 40% coverage.
Okay, thank you, Doctor.
Okay, then all the best. And
Doctor,
if you have any, yeah, tell me.
Doctor, the exam date is on 31st.
31st, yes. I think Mr. Anapura will inform that.
Okay, the thing is, currently with the latest schedule what we have received on the Eid day is falling on Qatar and Bahrain on 31st.
Okay.
So
yeah, 31st, yes. I'm not sure about the time and the date. Yes, I was told it's 31st, but time I'm not sure. Mr. Ranapura will advise that.
Is any possibility to change the date, Doctor?
That you have to speak to Mr. Ranapura.
Okay, fine.
Because generally he's the registrar and he's an independent person. So we don't get involved. That's a normal form across the world, because even in my earlier place, Wales also, registrar was a totally independent person.
Okay, Doctor.
Okay, then thank you very much. All the best, but you have the freedom to contact me at any moment. Even after the exam, don't worry. We are there, and we want to make sure that somehow you all graduate next year.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Bye.
Thank you, Doctor.